Hi, dear students. Welcome back to today's session on nation language. Today, we are going to look at the second part of the essay that we are currently doing. In the previous class, we saw the introduction to nation language, where we looked at Edward Cameau Brathwaite's introduction to the Caribbean islands as a stretch of islands stretching across 2,000 miles. And then he talked about the original inhabitants, the Amerindian people, and also about how colonization and the Western impact has had a great influence on the language that they speak now. And then we entered the previous class with the Western education system in the Caribbean islands, where we saw how the education system actually alienated people from their real living experiences. The Western education system focused more on the Western kind of living, whereas when the Caribbean children did that kind of study, did that kind of learning, it was difficult for them to talk about the experiences that they really were living through. So, Edward Cameau Brathwaite actually talks about the failure of the Western education system in helping people to articulate their experiences in the land. So in today's class, we are going to look at the features of nation language as elaborated by Edward Cameau Brathwaite. So the first feature is that he distinguishes nation language from the standard accepted variety of English. And he says that if the accepted variety of English has iambic pentameter, which is one of the meters of speech or the poetry, he says that the iambic pentameter is the normal speech pattern in the standard variety of English, but nation language ignores the pentameter. So this hints at a revolt against the English tradition, and he says that this is like a post-colonial tool for them. So if you remember, going back to the story of Prospero and Caliban, where Caliban says that I use your language so that I can curse you in a language that you understand. Similarly, the nation language makes use of the English variety so that it is not the same kind of English that the colonizer speaks, but it is a different kind, modified, adapted for their own convenience, and it conveniently ignores the pentameter structure in the standard English variety, and it uses a different structure, which is the dactyl form. So for those who are not familiar with the poetic meters, English language identifies 4 major poetic meters depending on the stress that you give to the verses. The first of this is iambic, which follows the structure of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. You'll learn more about this in the next semester while you do linguistics. It basically means the rhythm of English language is dependent on the stress and the unstressed syllables. So, iambic pentameter or iambic meter is a meter where there is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, again an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, and when you say it is iambic pentameter, you have 5 such sets of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. So as you see in the example, iambic is given using an example from William Shakespeare. The time of year thou mayest in me behold. So one unstressed syllable is followed by a stressed one. That is iambic. We have trochaic, we have anapaestic, which are again 2 different kinds of poetic meters. And the next one that we need to understand is dactylic. Dactylic is the form where there is a stressed syllable followed by two unstressed syllables. So, nation language, instead of following the iambic form, it follows the dactylic form, which means this is how it sounds. This is the forest, primeval, the murmuring pines, and the hemlock. So there is a stressed syllable followed by two unstressed syllables. So that is the usual speech pattern of the nation language, rather of the Caribbean English, and that is how it is different from the standard variety of English. For better understanding, the symbol, a downward symbol which is given in the poetic meter table, is the unstressed syllable, and the red apostrophe kind of symbol symbolizes the stressed syllable. That's how you read the meter of a particular piece of poetry. Moving on, he continues to talk about the features of nation language. He says that because it is not pentameter, because it is not iambic, and it is dactylic, it is not the standard educated form of English, and it is strongly influenced by the African model or the African aspect of the Caribbean heritage. As we talked about the origin of the people who live in the Caribbean islands, we said that most of them were slaves brought from Africa. So that African heritage is often reflected in the language that they speak. So just like how we identify Indian English, and in Indian English also we identify the people based on the kind of mother tongue influence in their language. For example, a person from Thrissur who speaks English will have the Thrissur nuances of rhythm and tone while they speak English. Similarly, the Kottayam people, they'll have their own different version of a tone and rhythm while they speak this English. So just like that, when the people from African origin speak English, try to speak that standard form of English, they are strongly influenced by their mother tongue in the African language. So it is strongly influenced by the African model. That's why it is not the same as a standard educated form of English. And then Camus Brathwaite moves on to say that even though it is English based on some lexical aspect, that is, even though you find words from English, it is different in terms of the rhythm, the sound explosions, and other features. We will now listen to a very small video which I have taken from the YouTube, where we identify, where we understand how different it is from the standard form of English.
Now let's get right to it. The first word that we'll be taking a look at is the word done or finish. So done in Jamaica is spelled D-U-N. That's how it's spelled in the Patois language. Now, to put that in a sentence so you can get an understanding of it, will be like, me done cook, which is, I'm finished cooking, or me done wash, which is, I'm finished doing my laundry, or me done play, you know, I'm finished playing. Now, that's an interesting word to know because we use it quite often a lot. Now, another word that you want to get yourself familiar with is the word craving. Okay? And to put that in a sentence, it would be like, you're craving, or you're so craving. That simply means that you are so greedy. Why are you so greedy? So craven simply stands for greedy. Okay, so the next word that we'll be taking a look at is the word gwe. And gwe simply means get away. So say for instance, you don't want to be bothered by someone, what you can say is, gwe from your son, left me alone. And that is simply get away from here, leave me alone, which is I don't want to be bothered.
As we saw in the video, the standard form of English is different from this Caribbean form of English. So he says that for the Caribbeans, English becomes a revolutionary form of language. And he says that it is not the language itself which is revolutionary, but the people make it revolutionary. The people who use it make it revolutionary. Language itself does not have the capacity to become revolutionary, but the people who use the language can use it in the form of a revolutionary mode. That's what we talked about in the previous slide, that nation language kind of became a post-colonial tool for the Caribbeans to use the language in their own way, to use the language which is adopted from the English system, which is adopted from the Western system, and adapted into their own form, their own particular way of speech. To look at a few features of the Caribbean English, we understand that in terms of the sounds that they make, sometimes they deliberately eliminate the last sound, the last consonant which comes at the end of the word. That's how for the word last, they would say only las. Bend, they would say only ben. Similarly, there is a tendency to include a different form of vowel in between certain words. And in terms of syntax, in terms of the word order, sometimes they totally ignore the helping verbs, the auxiliary verbs. So the auxiliary verbs which help you identify the tense is often left out. So for example, they would say we real good yesterday, or I fall asleep, which when they actually mean yesterday I fell asleep. So there are a lot of changes in terms of phonology. Phonology is the use of sounds, and in terms of the word order. Edward Cameau Brathwaite then moves on to distinguish nation language from a dialect. We also need to be aware of this word patois, P-A-T-O-I-S, which is pronounced as patois. Patois is the dialect of a particular region, especially one with low status in relation to the standard language of the country. Now, here again, when you look at a particular person, if that person is a Western man who looks at the Caribbean English, he would say that this is a patois. This is only a dialect which is of an inferior form. But for the Caribbeans, and especially for Cameau Brathwaite, it is not simply an inferior form of dialect, it is not simply an inferior form of language, but it is their nation language, something of which they become really proud of. So he starts differentiating between dialect and nation language to elaborate on his argument. So for him, a dialect is a particular form of language which is peculiar to a specific region or group. For us to understand better, we know that the standard form of English is one of the dialects, and the Cockney version of English is another form of dialect. Each region, when they adapt English into their own form, into their own language structures, that becomes a dialect. But based on the power position, certain dialects acquire a higher status, and that is how we have the standard form of English. And dialects are often considered as bad English or inferior kind of English, and especially when, just like a caricature, the dialect is used to refer to or to exaggerately refer to certain people or certain groups of individuals. And when we consider a form of language as a dialect or a patois, we are indirectly tampering on the people's dignity who use the language. It is a way of making fun of the people who use that language, whereby we are distorting the people's dignity who use that particular form of dialect. And Camus Bradford then moves on to talk about the nation language, where he says that it is a different form of language, different form of English, which is connected to the African aspect of experience. So it is English and African at the same time. And then he identifies three important characteristics of nation language. The first one, he says that it has its origin from an oral tradition. So just as we saw in the previous classes, the nation language or the Caribbean English is kind of a Creole. For communication purposes, the Africans and the English speaking group of people, they invented this new form combining both African words and the English words, and it's a kind of a Creole. So it does not have a written tradition initially. It originally has its evolution from an oral tradition. So to quote him, he says that the poetry, the culture itself, exists not in a dictionary but in the tradition of the spoken word. It is based as much on sound as it is on song. That is, the noise that it makes is part of the meaning. That is important because it is greatly based on sound. As we listened to the previous video clip, we understood that there are a lot of sounds which are included into the normal Caribbean English speech. There is stress given. For us, it might look unnecessary, but there are stress given to different words which actually do not need a stress. So there is a lot of importance to sound, or in other words, he uses the word noise. And he says that that noise is part of the meaning. So there is another Westerner who talks about the Caribbean English. He calls it funny very often. And he says that it is a funny language, and he says that even when they want to ask a question, they would pose it as a statement and then put a question mark at the end of it. And he laughs at that kind of use. So Edward Camus Brathwaite here says that the noise or the sounds which accompany the normal speech is actually part of the meaning. It cannot be separated from the speech. If that is separated, then it would become any other normal English. And this becomes nation language because it is characterized by this noise and the sounds associated with it. And then, as we said before, instead of the iambic pentameter, the nation language bases itself on the dactylic form. We'll look at calypso in the next slide. And that is the second feature. It does not follow iambic pentameter, but it follows the dactylic form. And the third one is that Camus Brathwaite says that the nation language is based on total expression. What he means by total expression is that there is a similarity in the kind of use of language among the people. And he says that this oral tradition, it demands the audience to complete the community. So, he says that this total expression, I caught him, he says this total expression comes about because people be in the open air, because people live in conditions of poverty, because they come from a historical experience where they had to rely on their very breath rather than on paraphernalia like books and museums and machines. They had to depend on immanence, the power within themselves rather than the technology outside themselves. So This is what he means by total expression. He says that the nation language actually helps them form a kind of community. It helps them in building a we feeling, a together feeling for that particular community. And that together feeling or the total expression comes because of the similarity in their experiences of oppression and poverty. So that's how he distinguishes nation language from dialect or a patwa. And finally, the last point he makes is that of calypso. Now, calypso employs, as we said before, the dactylic form of meter. It employs a stressed syllable followed by two unstressed syllables. He gives an example of Mighty Sparrow. Mighty Sparrow is a popular singer in the Caribbean islands, and one of his songs is referred to as an example here. Dan is the man in the van. So here also, if you look at the title of the song, we understand that Dan, man, and van are stressed syllables, and in between you have two unstressed syllables. So it sounds like Dan is the man in the van. So when he talks about calypso, he says that it is originally from the Trinidadian English, or it is originally from the Caribbean English. And another word that they use to refer to calypso is kaiso. He uses that word in the essay often. And he says that this is of African origin. So calypso actually comes from this kaiso. It is a different form of the kaiso, which is of African origin. And he defines it as a type of music and dance that originated in the West Indies, especially in Trinidad, and is characterized by improvised lyrics on topical or humorous subjects, and it is often a satire of the current events. Now, it is the Dan is the man in the van is a song which is an elaboration of this definition. We will take a quick look at the song and then discuss the features of it.
Captain, there's a traitor on board. Examine the horns. According to the education you get when you're small, you will grow up with true ambition and respect from one and all. But in my days in school, they teach me like a fool. The things they teach me, I should be a block-headed mule. You tell me Pussy has finished his work long ago, and now he resting and tame. Solomon Gandhi was born on a Monday, the ass of the lion's den. Winking, blinking, and nod, sail off in a wooden sloop. The goody losey tail and the alligator fighting to make monkey liver soup. And Dan is the man in the van. The poems and the lessons they write and send from England impress me. They were trying to cultivate comedians. Comic books made more sense. You know it is fictitious without pretense. Cartridge wanted to keep us in ignorance. Tell me if this ain't your business. Humpy Dumpy sat on a wall. Humpy Dumpy didn't fall. Goosey, goosey, gander. Where shall I wander? Ding dong dell. Pussy in the well. Ah, K-K-I-T-I-K-K-I-T-I-V-I. Rikki-tikki-tikki-tikki-tavi. Dan is the man in the van.
So here in this song, he says that the education that they got from the English culture has made them idiots, because all those things that they had to read about Robin Hood or about King Alfred or King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, all those have given them nothing but they have only made them certain fools. And that's what he says in the beginning. He says, according to the education you get, you small, you'll grow up with true ambition and respect for one and all. So, here the dactylic form is used, and the dactylic form gives rise to this particular form of calypso, this unique variety of music and dance that originated in the West Indies. Uh, so, he concludes this section of the essay by saying that nation language has become very confident these days. He says that nation language, as a unique form of language, has helped the Caribbeans to move forward and to break free of the literary and linguistic models imposed on them by the West. And he says that this submerged or emerging culture, he uses contrasting words to represent the Caribbean culture. He says that it was once submerged or suppressed, but now it is an emerging form. And he says that people have actually started recognizing nation language. So nation language has helped the Caribbeans to move forward and to break free of the stereotypes that are imposed on them and to break free of the Western models which is imposed on them by the West, which is essentially a great post-colonial achievement for them. Thank you.